Hello, everybody. This is your boy Dan, and we are here for Alan Wake Remastered manuscript readings. So, we're going to go through the manuscript readings that we've picked up for episode 3. I believe we went through all the ones for episode 1 and 2, and then we picked up a bunch for episode 3, and now we're in episode 4. So, we're going to go through the manuscripts here. If you are looking for gameplay videos, please look for the next video. This is a episode number and a half, so this will be a manuscript reading. So again, if you're looking for a gameplay video, please move on to the next full number, and that will be a gameplay video. Otherwise, let's tune in for the manuscripts. Yeah, so let me just double check episode 2. Yep, nothing extra. So episode 3. Oh, I'm missing some pages, yo. I tried to be as thorough as I could, but I guess not all. I didn't get all of them.
Mr. Randolph liked Rose. That little smile she had. How she was still sweet when life had tried so hard to make her bitter. It wasn't any of his business what she did in her trailer. But those strangers, the writer and his smart-ass sidekick, looked like trouble. And they'd been in there for hours, way past her normal bedtime. He reached for the phone and called the sheriff's station.
Yeah, she's a sweet girl. And yeah, life has been pretty hard for her, especially in a remote town like this. Probably not the best opportunities, but she seems to be positive. Alan called her kind of an airhead, but I think that's a little unfair. But then again, he's kind of jaded, so I can kind of see where he's coming from. Just, it's still not cool, Alan. But that's how the police got there, because he called them. And I think that was warranted. Yeah, whatever she does in her trailer is her business, but I mean, it just weirdly, two strangers come in, two dudes go to a woman's trailer, and they've been there for a long time, way past when she's normally there. Might as well call the police to give like a what is it called? A courtesy or safety check, right? I mean, if you were him, a landlord of all those trailers, I think if you were a decent person, you might think that. Unless they paid you specifically to say, hey, I'm going to have people over, don't call cops. That's different. It's illegal, but it's different.
For decades, the darkness that wore Barbara Jagger's skin slept fitfully in the dark place that was its home and prison. It was hungry and in pain. It dreamed of its nights of glory when the poet's writing had called it from the depths and given it a brief, terrible taste of power and freedom. The rock stars had stirred it from the deep sleep the poet had sunk it back to in the end. When it sensed the writer on the ferry, it opened its eyes.
Dang. So the dark presence was in her for a long time. And when it sensed Alan coming, that's when it woke up. I think it was there from the time of Thomas Zane. Because he was a previous writer who had come and got all this weird stuff happening, and then it ended. And now it's Alan's turn, now that he's another writer, and this dark presence came back out. So when Alan went to the bathroom at Stuckey's, maybe it was the same woman who came to see him? But no, I feel like we walked past the dark woman, and then as we were coming back into the diner proper, we still passed by her. But I got the impression that it was this one and the same person.
Nightingale stared through the broken studio window into the dark woods. He turned around, started to walk out, but Maine grabbed his arm. "Young man, you almost shot me. You don't shoot off rounds at people like that. What's the matter with you?" Nightingale shook his arm free, marched out. His cheeks burned with rage and humiliation.
Humiliation? Man, you deserved it. You opened fire on not only a suspect, but a civilian that was in the line of fire. You don't have a happy trigger figure like that if you've got a badge. That's just wrong. You are a disgrace to the badge. It's crazy.
Sarah trusted her gut, and her gut said Agent Nightingale was an asshole. He felt wrong, and it wasn't just the smell of stale booze. It was in the way he flashed his badge, pulled rank, the look in his eyes when he wanted answers. Where was Alan Wake? What was this about an accident? Where was his wife? And most importantly, why did she let Wake go? He wouldn't answer her questions. Federal business was all he'd say.
Considering he only said federal business, I feel like it's probably more personal than it is professional. And yeah, I mean, if he's smelling like booze and he's all hopped up and ready for vengeance, it seems like it's a personal matter and not a professional. Because if he was a professional, they probably would have gotten Alan by now because it wouldn't have come at him so aggressively. He may not have felt the need or the panic to try to run from the police, because usually that's not a good idea. But because this is a wooded area, I suppose it was a lot easier to lose the police. And also the darkness was helping him too, right? Because it was destroying and killing off police vehicles and policemen respectively. And yeah, that's how Alan was able to get through. Because it do you remember when it took down the helicopter? Like, dude.
The pipe wrenched itself loose from the bridge's steel framework. Wrapped in darkness, it floated in midair, twitching. For a moment, I didn't understand what I was looking at. The heavy object lurched at me with impossible force. I threw myself out of the way, but just barely. When I turned my flashlight on it, it shook in a dark rage before it flew at me again.
Oh man, I hated those. Yeah, attacked by a possessed object. Ugh. Like, I guess in the grand sense of the game, they're not that difficult of an enemy, and you don't have to use up ammo. But I don't know. It just seems unfair. They just launch themselves at you, and because of ragdoll physics, even if you get out of the way, it could bounce off of something else and still hit you and kill you. Not cool. Waken the dark presence in the lodge.
I slammed the door shut right in his smug face. He pleaded for me to open the door. True to form, the asshole actually thought I would obey. I had no sympathy left, no guilt either, not for him. I took a moment to savor the scream. I bet I had a smile on my face. It was all that I had time for. The dark presence was inside the lodge with me.
Whoa. Is this a foreshadow moment? I don't remember something like this happening, where Alan seemed to have been the bad guy. Or maybe not bad guy, but taking it out on somebody. It's not the kidnapper, because you never met the kidnapper at the lodge. Otherwise, I don't remember Alan closing the door on somebody and leaving them out to the presence. But yeah, regardless, Alan locks somebody out, and he pays for it with the dark presence there. And Wake attacked by the dark presence.
The darkness surged towards me, sucking everything loose from the ground into its depths, tugging at my clothes. I saw the flare the kidnapper had dropped and threw myself towards it just as I felt my feet leave the ground. The darkness embraced me with the force of a tornado. Somehow I managed to light the flare. The darkness roared and cast me away. I fell toward the dark waters of the lake far below.
Yeah, that's what happened just before we woke up here with the doctor. And I guess it makes sense that the doctor was the one that pulled him out, because he likes to fish, and so he probably would have been at the lake. Yeah, so I think that gels. The only thing is that as a doctor, you would think that he would take him to the police. I mean, he is wanted, right?
With Nightingale gone and the night wind blowing in through the broken studio window, Maine stared at Sarah. The sheriff looked away. Maine's voice shook with barely controlled anger. That boy's doing more drinking than thinking. I hope you know what you're doing, Sarah. He's got a sickness in his eyes. You take my word for it. He wants Wake for a reason, and it's not for anything good.
Yeah, that was my line of thinking. It's something personal. He's got something against Alan. Because if you notice, every time he barks orders at Alan, he always tries to call him some by another name. Usually, it's another famous writer, kind of in a mocking tone. Like he called him Hemingway before. He called him a few other names. I don't remember any other than Hemingway. I think that was the most recent. Yeah. Either he's possessed, which I don't believe, or he's got something against Alan in particular. It's like I think there's like a subreddit for that. FU in particular. Thomas Zane in love with Barbara Jagger. Oh, we heard about this
When
guy.
Thomas Zane fell for Barbara Jagger, it happened fast. She was young, vibrant, and beautiful, full of life. He had never been a very happy man, and without any seeming effort, she had changed all that. Zane felt good for the first time in his life. Everything she did was another piece of a jigsaw puzzle he hadn't even known he'd been missing. And best of all, she made the words flow, strong and sharp. She was his muse.
Yeah, but as we know later, she was possessed by the Dark Presence, and the Dark Presence apparently loves writers. Probably because it needs the creativity of a writer um, to cause the havoc that it does.
Some of the Taken retained echoes of their former selves, but these were just the nerve twitches of a dead thing. Nothing remained but a shell covered and filled with darkness. In most cases, these puppets were enough for the purposes of the Dark Presence. But for anything more elaborate, as with the writer, it was different. It needed his mind. And so rather than taking him over completely, it merely touched him.
Oh. So it needs writers for their minds. And so it's forcing him through other people's actions that affect him in order to get what it wants. Wake and Barry in the cell. Oh, this must be future because we're not in the cell yet. Because Barry just recently was arrested because he was unconscious at the trailer park.
I stared through the bars of the jail cell. Barry stood behind me, swaying on his feet, looking as ill as I felt. Agent Nightingale stood on the other side of the bars with Sheriff Breaker. Nightingale had a stack of manuscript pages in his hand. He seemed unhinged as he gloated. "Well, I've got you now, Raymond Chandler. It's all here, all the evidence, including conspiracy to murder a federal agent."
I think that would be damning evidence having manuscript that foretells the future because a lot of that stuff already happened, so it's presumed that he wrote these after the fact or everything that was happening was premeditated. So that's not a good look on Barry, but this guy Nightingale, I can't you can't trust him. I mean, he's got a vendetta.
Things were never as simple in real life as in fiction. I had lost count of the times I had wished there'd be a clear reason for my writer's block. Something to fight, something to lash out on. There wasn't. I was filled with doubt. I was nothing like the hero in my books. Alex Casey had gone through his life with single-minded determination, never wavering from his goal. Even now, I was angry at myself, angry at Alice, angry at Barry. I was fumbling and I had no plan.
Yeah, that is something that's different between real life and fiction. In fiction, people can be single-mindedly doing things. Like, yeah, that happens in real life as well, but I feel like those type of people are few and far between. They tend to be very driven and do things, but uh in general, people in life are, not black and white. It's a very big gray area in there. Nightingale in the Majestic.
Even behind the closed doors and curtains of his grimy room at the Majestic, the local motel, Nightingale could feel the locals' eyes on him, the unrelenting pressure of their judgment. He forced it out of his mind. For all he knew, they could all be under Wake's spell already. You do what you have to do to get the job done. He took comfort from the bottle in his hand. Please, he thought, just let me get through this.
Well, that's a glimpse into Nightingale. He's got a demons of his own. Obviously the drinking, but it seems like he's not fighting it and winning. He is fighting it and losing. But I wonder how we should take the whole under Alan's spell. Does he actually think that Alan is like converting people or mind manipulating people or what that is? Or if he's just saying that Alan is just charismatic and people are falling for him. I don't know. Mott at Cauldron Lake. Who's Mott?
Maud had checked all of Stucky's rental cabins. There had been no sign of the Wakes. It was dark when he'd found their car parked at the end of the road by Cauldron Lake. It made no sense. They must have taken a wrong turn, but there was no sign of them, and the car had been there for hours already. Frustrated, Mott stood on the rotten ruin of the footbridge that had once led to Diver's Isle before it sank beneath the waves years ago. The boss wouldn't be happy.
Okay, so now we know who Mott is. He's the caretaker. And yeah, the Wakes had to get out of their car and walk to the rest of the way to the lodge that was in the middle of the lake, which is not actually there. Somehow it was there only for them to be there. Just before all of this kicked off. Wake wakes up in the lodge.
I tried to hold on to Alice, but her form melted away. I was losing control. Dr. Hartman stood in her place. I wanted to hit him, but my arms were jelly. He smiled. It was a reassuring smile, and I hated him for it. I had to give you a sedative. Don't fight it. You went through another rough period. Right now, it's very important that you stay calm. We don't want you to have another episode. You're a patient at my clinic. Have been for a while now.
So this had just happened as we started this new episode. Yeah, and it leads one to wonder whether this whole episode, this whole game so far has just been a psychotic episode that he's been going through. And he's just now reached some clarity, kind of like a calm in the storm. And he's just reassuring him, hey, you've been a patient here for a while. I've been taking care of you. Don't worry about it. But I wonder also if that's the dark presence. Like, if in reality, it would make sense to see it from the doctor's point of view, his perspective, because like Alan is going through all kinds of stuff, precipitated by things such as the mentioned death of his wife. But in the game world, it could be an illusion by the dark presence. But also within the game, it could be meta and say that the dark presence is a part of his psychoses. So, interesting, to say the least. Mott on the ferry.
For Mott, spying on the writer on the ferry had been a disappointment. His boss had made Wake out to be something special, but Mott hadn't been impressed. He'd gotten a good long look at the wife, though, and he liked what he saw. Mott had fantasized about goading Wake into a fight, but it hadn't happened. Still, he'd get his chance to see if the writer had anything in him. He'd been promised as much.
Whoa, so Mott was the guy on the ferry that didn't want to talk, and he was spying on Alan the whole time. But he has a boss, as he cried out before the dark presence ate him up, that his boss was telling him to go after him. And that's why he kidnapped the wife. So maybe he did have the wife at one point, and then she slipped through their confinement, or she escaped and just fell into the hands of maybe the dark presence. I don't know, but yeah, he's had a thing against Alan, I guess, because of jealousy. It looks like, or a prior arrangement, because he said he'd been promised as much, which means that whoever his boss is must have known that he had something against Alan, or at least knew that he would want to get into a fight with Alan in the first place. Now, otherwise, why would he promise them that? Wow, interesting. Tor, it's Nurse Sinclair.
Lightning flashed behind the windows of Cauldron Lake Lodge. Tor Anderson laughed and held the steel hammer above his head. Nurse Sinclair was trying to calm him down without success. Tor grinned madly and shouted, "My hammer's up. Here's a friendly poke from Molnir, wench." He brought the hammer down with all his might on Sinclair's head. "We're on a comeback tour, baby."
What? Tor Anderson, that's someone we've not met yet. And it sounds like a steel hammer above his head. At first I was thinking it was a lobotomy hammer, but no, it sounds like this is like a big construction hammer, and it's about to kill somebody. Kill Sinclair. Dang. And he's obviously crazy too, because he's calling it Mjolnir. jeez. That is crazy. Wow. Uh, sorry, I got wrapped up in those. Those were very compelling. Wow, look at the time. The this video went a lot longer than I thought it was for just the manuscript readings. But if you've made it this far, I hope you've enjoyed going through those as much as I did. It really gives you a lot of insight and really gets you juiced up and amped up for the next episode, which I hope that you'll come back for, because the next one will be a gameplay episode as we collect more manuscripts, and we'll do another manuscript leading later. But uh, yeah, we'll be doing a gameplay in the next one. And until then, bye.